Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And like my colleague, Senator Whitehouse, I don't want my silence to be interpreted as consent to the process that we've faced before this Senate Judiciary Committee. It is unlike any process I have ever seen. This designation of committee confidential should be put in historic context. There will be an opportunity for us later this afternoon to meet in confidential and secret private session to discuss this nominee. That is not unusual. It is done for virtually every nominee. Some of the meetings are literally last a matter of a minute or two, and we say there's nothing to talk about, and we're leaving. But it's happened in the past. But whenever we dealt with committee confidential, it was something that was very specific and usually very personal to a nominee. And it was done by bipartisan agreement that we would protect the nominee from assertions or comments that may not have any truth to them whatsoever, but the committee should take into consideration. That is a far cry from what we have faced with this nominee. I cannot understand, and I said this on my opening statement here, the authority that we have given to a man named Bill Burke, a former assistant to the nominee, that we have said to Mr. Burke, you will decide what America gets to see about Brett Kavanaugh. You will make the decision as to which documents we will be allowed to discuss openly and publicly and which documents we cannot. Who is this man? By what authority could he possibly be denying to the American people information about a man who is seeking a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the land? The National Archives is usually the starting point of this process. I put in the record yesterday a statement from the National Archives disavowing this whole process, saying this is not the way we've done this in the past. We usually initiate this. Please give us a few weeks to do it in an orderly way. But the decision was made by the White House and the administration not to go down that path, not to take the same course we have on previous nominees, but instead to allow to this gentleman, Bill Burke, a private attorney, the authority to decide what the American people can see about the background of Brett Kavanaugh in other capacities. Who is Bill Burke? All that I know of him is that he was once an assistant to the nominee. I am told that he is not only the attorney for George W. Bush, but also for the White House counsel, Mr. McGahn, Mr. Priebus, the former chief of staff to the President of the United States, and Steve Bannon, a man whom I couldn't characterize in a few words, but he's his personal attorney. And in this situation, he is now the litmus test. He's the filter to decide what the American people will see about this nominee. And that's why we bring this issue before you. Lest you think we are carping on a trifle here, we are talking about whether the American people have the right to know. And we now know that less than 10% of the documents reflecting the public career of Mr. Kavanaugh have been made available to this committee. And I just want to say to my colleagues, and particularly my colleague from New Jersey, I completely agree with you. I concur with what you are doing, and let's jump into this pit together. I hope my other colleagues will join me, so that if there is going to be some retribution against the senator from New Jersey, count me in. I want to be part of this process. I want to understand how Bill Burke, this private attorney, has the right to say, as one of my colleagues mentioned, this should be considered a classified document, a top secret document, a document that relates to the national security of the United States. By what right, by what authority can Mr. Burke possibly designate a document as committee confidential? He has no authority to do that. He only has authority because he has the consent and the cooperation of the Republican majority on this committee. That is the only thing that brings us to this moment. And let me just say in closing one last thing. I am sorry that one of my colleagues has characterized all of us on the Democratic side on the first day of this hearing as contemptuous. I have never heard that said before in a full committee meeting, but it's been said. And I'm particularly sorry that he singled out one of our colleagues on this side and accused him of conduct unbecoming a United States senator. I think statements like that are personal, they are disparaging, they question the motive of a colleague, something that we should do our very best to avoid in the United States Senate if we're ever going to restore the reputation of this body.